Hi everyone, Scribblefix here and welcome back to my channel. Just a little disclaimer, I am sick again, so my voice doesn't sound the best. Apologies, but I still wanted to narrate this because it's pretty good artwork and I'm pretty proud of what I did here. Isn't my immune system great? It's definitely not lazy at all. Today I'm doing a watercolour and ink wash drawing of a castle. When I was younger, I always loved drawing castles. There's just something magical about them. And I was probably heavily influenced by Hogwarts because I was, and still am, a bit obsessed with the Harry Potter series. But yeah, I started off sketching the basic shapes for the towers and buildings and stuff. I didn't want it to be too complex, but detailed enough that it looks nice. Once I had it all sketched out, I used my light box, as you can see, to trace it over onto some of my new hot press watercolour paper. I used a pencil to do this instead of inking straight away, because I wanted to use my dip pen to ink it, and I thought it just would be easier this way. Once I had the basic lines drawn, I grabbed my dip pen and started inking in the basic shapes. I'm using my Atelier waterproof drawing ink to do this, along with my Maru dip pen. I diluted the ink a bit with some demineralized water, just so that the lines were grey as opposed to black. I wanted it to look a bit more realistic, and you can't really do that if you have really dark outlines. I have to say, I'm really liking this pen. Some people don't like that you have to dip it into the ink a lot, but to be honest, I'm used to painting lines with watercolour paint, so it kind of feels second nature to me. It's not really much of an inconvenience at all. I showed this ink and pen off in my last video, where I did an art haul. If you haven't seen that yet, definitely go check it out after you finish this. Then I started inking in the texture on the towers. I did a sort of random cobblestone pattern on the first one, and I have to be honest, that took a very long time. But it was kind of worth it. I think it looks really good, and I sped up that part a lot in editing. Not all parts in the castle have the same texture though. I wanted them to vary a little bit, so other parts have a sort of liney brick texture to them. And that bit was a bit quicker, but it also looks good. If you don't know what a dip pen is, it's a type of pen that usually consists of a metal nib, like those on a fountain pen, mounted to a handle or a holder. Those are often made with wood or other materials. Mine is actually plastic. Generally, they don't have an ink reservoir, so you must dip it into an ink bowl or bottle to continue drawing or writing. Dip pens emerged in the early 19th century when they replaced quill pens, and in some parts of the world, reed pens. They were generally used before the development of fountain pens in the later 19th century, and today they are mainly used in illustration, calligraphy, and comics. Just so you know, I got that information from Wikipedia. I'll chuck a link in the description if you want to keep reading about them. They're pretty cool. After I had it all inked out, I went in with an ink wash. I used more of the same ink, but I diluted it even more. And because it was purely grayscale, I was able to pay attention to just the shadows and values. I'm using a method that a lot of the old traditional painters used to use, and I also see this in digital sometimes as well. It's a bit hard to pronounce, so I'm just going to put it on the screen for you. Basically, you have an underpainting, which is purely grayscale, so you can pay attention to just the shadows and highlights and values and the texture. I wanted to make sure that each part of the castle had a slightly different value and a slightly different texture as well. Some of the parts that I didn't actually add texture with the dip pen, I did little dabs of ink just to add a little bit more texture. I tried to pay attention to where the shadows would hit, because there are lights on the castle that are on, and those parts would be the brightest part. I tried to make sure that further away from the windows there was darker parts on the castle. And some of the bricks on the tower were a little bit darker as well, because ones that stick out more would cast more of a shadow. Also, under the stairs I added a bit of a dark shadow, because the stairs themselves would cast a shadow because there are windows above them. I also tried to make the top the darkest because it was further away, so I added more layers of ink to that part. And then I just went over the whole thing again, just to make sure that each had their own bit of texture and it was visually pleasing to look at each part. For the sky, I started using a bit of pure undiluted ink to paint it, just to get it really black and dark, because I wanted it to be a nighttime scene. But it was a little bit thick, so I ended up adding a little bit of water just to get it to spread easier. I used 2 coats of this so I could get it as dark as I could. And once that is all done, you go in with a transparent layer of colour over the top. I'm using watercolour for this, and that's how you get the hues in. Now, I didn't want to just have one hue for the buildings, because for me it would make it look a bit flat. So for the lighter parts where the windows are, I added a bit of yellow, and for the shadows at the bottom part, I added a tiny bit of green. Towards the top, I tried to have the colours desaturated a bit more, and also a bit darker, because I wanted to push them towards the back into the background. I also layered a bit of blue on those top parts as well, and I think it worked pretty nicely. There's a lot of layers of paint on this. I just kept doing thin layers of colour until I could get to the point where I was happy with it. And I have to say, this paper held up really well to that. It didn't warp as much as the other paper I use, and I didn't even tape it down or anything. I was pretty impressed. I really enjoyed combining the waterproof ink wash with the watercolours. I'm always looking for something different to try out. It's a really interesting method and I found it a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to try it again in the future. If you're interested, I definitely recommend trying it out if you have the materials. I wanted the colours to mostly be nice and warm, to give it a kind of cozy feeling, because yeah, it's nighttime, but I wanted it to have a kind of happy feel to the whole thing. Once that I had all those colours out, I felt that it needed a little bit more to make it pop, so I gave the roofs and the tops of the towers just a bit of red, and I thought that worked out pretty nicely. Lastly, I used a bit of gouache paint just to paint in the windows, make them white again. And once I did that, it kind of brought it all in together, and the lighter parts around the windows made more sense because they had a light source. And I love how they stand out a lot, especially up the top. It really does remind me of a castle at night time with all the lights on. So yeah. But anyways, this video is drawing to a close, so I'm just going to say thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. So see you later.